Alrighty, I think we are live right now. Hiya, my name is Hinny, if you're new, and I am an astrologer. And I'm just gonna check that the stream is working. Just gonna look at my phone to see. Hiya, if you're just tuning in. Okay, if you are just tuning in, okay, that works perfectly fine. If you are just tuning in, do leave a nice little comment. Say hello if you can. It is lovely to talk to you in the chat as well, for those of you joining the live stream. If not, leave a comment below after watching the video, because it's going to be up after the fact as well. And this is going to be our final part of the Moon Through the Houses stream series. And I am actually going to put parts 3 and 4 together today just for you. And thank you for those of you who have already watched parts 1 and 2 and left some lovely comments and feedback. It was really lovely. And I hope everyone is keeping safe and well, as per usual. You know, Miss Corona, she's not really gone away yet. And October is a difficult month. It's a difficult month. November, I think, from like mid-November to late November, things might start for the collective to somewhat pick up, just because we have a lot of these retrograding planets going direct again, including Neptune. Did you know? But Neptune is going direct again in November. So that's amazing, because Neptune has been retrograding for a long time. But yeah, hiya if you are just tuning in. And before, oh, by the way, happy new moon in Libra. Later today, around like 7:30, 7:45 UK time in the evening, is officially the new moon in Libra. And, you know, new moons are great times to set an intention. And this particular new moon and this particular intention that you set leads to the full moon, which is actually on Halloween. And that hasn't happened for a long time, apparently, like a few decades, I think, to have a full moon on Halloween. So that's fantastic. I might be wrong about that, but I think it's quite a rare full moon. And we definitely are full of, you know, rare surprises this year of 2020, aren't we? But yes, happy new moon in Libra. And I hope you set a nice intention, and that by the full moon, come Halloween, come 31st of October, you have some great culminations for yourself. Alrighty, so before we get into parts 3 and 4 of this stream series, I just wanted to say that I am an astrologer and I'm an experienced astrologer. And if you want a birth chart reading, please get in touch. You can get in touch with me at queerhinny@gmail.com. You can visit my website, hinnyhigh.com, to have a look at my, not just my services, but my testimonials. I have a testimonials page there where some of my lovely clients of the past have written reviews. And if you want, you can take a look at those and see sort of what the general response to the way I read is. And also, you can get a reading that is general. So if you want a really general birth chart reading, I recommend you book about 2 to 3 hours, depending on how much astrology you already know. If it's your first time to get a reading, I definitely recommend at least 2 hours. But if you have like just a specific question or two about your chart and you already know a little bit about astrology, I recommend getting a 1 hour or 30-minute session with me. And again, do check my rates, please. And also, I have a new Facebook page. So if you are on Facebook, please go and give the page a like and a follow. That would really help, you know, the algorithms and the growth of the page. And it is Queer Hinny. So those Facebookers, you can go to Queer Hinny and give me a follow if you like. And of course, if you're not subscribed to me on YouTube, please subscribe and please click the notification bell so that you get all of the notifications of my live streams and all my other videos. I have a Twitter as well, a brand new Twitter. It is Hinnylicious. Okay, so Hinny and then licious, like in delicious. So Hinnylicious. is my Twitter handle. If you tweet, please go and follow me. That would be wonderful. And finally, final announcement to make is that I've just made a Patreon account. So for those of you who've been with me from the very beginning, you might be really interested in supporting me on Patreon. I have three tiers that you can subscribe to. They're from £3 all the way to £30. And the really great thing about what I'm doing is that no matter which tier you subscribe to, you get exactly the same content. So it's more about how much you're able to contribute to the support. But it doesn't matter whether you pay £3 a month or £30, you get the exact same exclusive content that you cannot find here on YouTube. So it will be just for you. And that's kind of all I wanted to announce. Let's get into the Moon Through the Houses stream series parts 3 and 4. Again, if you are streaming in live, do say hello, leave a comment. But we're going to start with the Moon in the 7th house. And the 7th house, again, look at parts 1 and 2 if you are interested about the Moon in houses 1 through to 6, because I already did that. And also look at part 1 if you're interested in what the Moon is and what the houses are generally, okay? But the 7th house, just in a brief little nutshell, is about things like your committed partners. It's also about the other, like the other person, the other thing, the other concept, the other idea. If we imagine this analogy that I like to use of Simba from The Lion King atop the cliff, looking across the horizon, or the vista, right, the circle of life and all that jazz. If you imagine when Simba's in the 7th house, Simba now is directly opposite another lion cub or another Simba who is across that vista and also doing the same from their cliff, atop their cliff, and they're looking directly at Simba. So this is the 7th house, and therefore the 7th house does include things like hidden enemies. Not hidden enemies, open enemies, okay? Open enemies. Mercury is retrograde right now, but open enemies and open or easy obstacles and oppositions. And therefore, this can also include projections. So how we might project ourselves, our insecurities onto other people or other things, other situations, places, whatever it might be, anything, anyone other. The 7th house does include how we might project onto that. So when you have the Moon in this house, then you may well be the type of person who draws in these open enemies. So take care, because the Moon, as I mentioned before in this series, is a very sort of unconscious or subconscious sort of part of our powers. So we're not always in control of our Moon. And that's really important for you, especially Moon in the 7th house person, because you're drawing in these open enemies and these things that you can easily oppose. Oh, by the way, this is River Horse, the beautiful purple hippo. Say hello. This is River Horse's debut on my channel. But yeah, you will draw in with the Moon in the 7th house, these open enemies and all that fun oppositional jazz, but also things like obstacles in general. And also, if you have the Moon in the 7th house, you could be someone who is opposed to your mother, because the Moon does sometimes denote the mother of your life. So maybe you are very much opposed to the mother, or you have been in the past. Or it could work out that the mother is like a committed partner to you. So remember, the 7th house is the house of both the committed partners, but also this sort of opposites attract, open enemies type of vibe. So the mother to you could be someone who's like an enemy, or your mother could be someone who's actually like a lifelong partner. Okay, so you have a sort of committed partnership going on, not just mother and child, but there's something else there. Not in a weird way, but like there's something else where they're like your partner in life. Moon in the 7th house people also might have a deep need for the mother, because the Moon does deal with your deep down private needs. And remember, you might remember I said earlier in the series that the moon is sometimes interpreted as who or what we are deep down. And sometimes people say the moon is your real sign, it's your real zodiac sign. So that might resonate with you. Moon in the seventh house people also might be very intuitive about other people. And you might be a great sort of person who can care for other people with ease. You just have a natural instinct or response mechanism to care for other people. And that can even include your enemies. But also, I've found quite recently, actually, looking at clients' charts, that the seventh house, having the moon here, can also be really great if you are, or if you want to be, someone who works with other people in some sort of caring capacity. So that could be like a psychic, that could be like a therapist, that could be like a psychoanalyst, anyone whose job or occupation or skill it is to help other people through also using your, not just your knowledge, but like how your, well, yeah, I guess your intuitional knowledge and your emotional intelligence to actually care for and help and respond to and take responsibility for your clients or your customers, right? So it could be a great position to have. And if you haven't unlocked it and you want to become like a psychotherapist, for example, then unlock your moon in the seventh house and learn more about it, because 99% certain it's going to be a fantastic asset for you personally. Alrighty, let's move on to having moon in the eighth house. And again, in a nutshell, the eighth house includes such themes as trauma and insecurities. So it's the deep dark well. Okay, Simba's now going into the deep dark well of the zodiac chart, of your birth chart. And so it's not very like easy, the eighth house. It does have, again, things like trauma, insecurities, fears in this house. But the eighth house also includes, just generally, other people's stuff. So if the second house, you might remember, included themes like my stuff, my dressing gown, like my book, my phone, my money, all of that is second house stuff. The eighth house is everyone else's money, everyone else's book. So you borrow a book from someone, that's an eighth house activity or an eighth house energy going on. If you take out a loan, that's something eighth house. If you are in debt in some other way, like you just owe someone something or they owe you something, that's eighth house, because the eighth house does deal with bonds and debts and sort of symbiotic bonds as well. So be careful with the eighth house. If you're an eighth house person, you have a lot of planets here, or you have a lot transiting your eighth house right now, be careful, because the eighth house is where we can form these manipulative relationships as well to people and things. And the eighth house also goes hand in hand with the seventh. Did you know? Because yeah, the seventh house is the partner you might commit to, and you might like be sort of, Tinder might really match you. That's seventh house, Tinder matching the two of you or more of you, right? But the eighth house is like, okay, the Tinder phase, the honeymoon phase is over, baby, it's over. And now it's been like 6 months or 6 years, okay? And you're having to deal with this other person's or the other people's darker sides or their baggage, their emotional baggage. You're having to sort of lift up the veneer. You're having to see these partners, these other people, for who they really are. And whether or not you can deal with that, okay, is a question of how much of a handle you have on your eighth house. So the eighth house and having the moon here then may provide someone who draws in a lot of debt, basically, because the eighth house again is debts, other people's resources, finances, financial bonds. So you might attract debt. or just like other people's shiz. So do be careful that you're not drawing in other people's stuff. Like a lot of friends and family might ask you to just like hold a lot of their stuff in your house. That's just one way this could manifest, and you just, even if you don't want to, it's just kind of like coming your way. You're pulling it in. So do take care about that, my love, Moon in the 8th house person. Moon in the 8th house people, this is Nicki Minaj's placement, by the way. Nicki Minaj has this placement, I'm pretty sure. Virgo Moon in the 8th house, if I'm not mistaken. But this might give someone who has a deep need for loyalty and also has a deep need for constant bonds. So this loyalty, these bonds could be with or to people, but also with like a company or with a concept, anything that you want to sort of fuse yourself with in that 8th house symbiotic way. And Moon in the 8th house people can also be very nurturing of fears. And this can be your fears or again, other people's fears, because this is again, the house of other people's shiz, right? So you might actually be a great nurturer of other people's fears and insecurities. And going back kind of to the 7th house, if you are a psychotherapist or a psychic or a therapist of some other sort, or even a coach of some sort, and you have planets natally both in the 7th and the 8th house, this could be even more brilliant for you, potentially. You have even more magic innately, more powers innately already to help people with their deep insecurities, their fears. And so it's not just you dealing with your fears and insecurities and your secrets, because the 8th house is about secrets, but other people's. And that could be really great if you want to go down that kind of route professionally. You could also be quite reactive to fears as well, though. So keep that in mind, because the moon is reactive. It's a reactive planet. It's a very reactive part of our personal powers, our magic. And so you, with the moon in the 8th house, may well be very reactive, yet again, to your fears. And that could be good, bad, or ugly, right? Like it could be reactive in the responsible sense, like the proactive sense, like you're taking action to fight your fears all the time in that responsible way. Or you get incredibly moody and sensitive, depressed, touchy when it comes to things that trigger your fears and insecurities. So that could also be what happens. So again, it really depends with how you're handling and how much you know about your moon in the 8th house. So moon in the 8th house people, hiya. If you're just tuning into the stream, by the way, do leave a comment if you can in the chat. I would love to hear from you and to hear, where your moon is, what sign is your moon in, and what house is your moon in. So we're just doing houses now, but the sign is also very important. The sign is kind of the flavor of how these themes are going to be dealt with by your moon. And so do let us know. Hiya, Kelly. I love you too, Kelly. Thank you very much. Scorpio in the 12th house. And we're going to get to the 12th house in a bit. So stay tuned, Kelly. Yes, ouch. I'm a 12th house moon person as well. But yes, moon in the 8th house. We have reactive to fears. So keep that in mind. And if you have the moon in the 8th house, you can really intuit, because the moon is all about intuiting. It's our emotional intelligence. You can really intuit or just know about things like death or about things like ends, as in when cycles are going to end, and also when cycles are going to begin, because the 8th house is all about cycles. And that key word that is often used with the 8th house, transformation, it is about transformation and transformational energy. It's how, like Jean Grey, you handle that energy as well. By the way, if you're interested, later I'm going to be giving you a Pluto through the houses series. So stay tuned in the next week or two. That is going to be up on my channel. So if you're really interested in your Pluto, okay, stay tuned, subscribe, click the notification bell, and find out where your Pluto is as well, because that's going to be my next video project for you here on YouTube. because it's quite similar in ways to the 8th house. Yes, hard to recognize your own emotions with the moon in the 12th. Yeah. And even with the 8th house, so 4th, 8th, and 12th house moon people can have, as Kelly says, this issue with recognizing or struggling with or responding to and taking responsibility for all your emotions and your needs. And because these houses are very deep houses, and you have to go deep to approach and to organize these themes. And if your chart overall is more, let's say, fiery, or more, let's say, airy, then you might have more of a problem with your fourth, with having the moon or other planets in your 4th, 8th, and 12th houses. But yes, the moon in the 12th house people, you have this intuition about cycles in general, and the sort of how everything is always changing, right? And everything is always transforming from one state to another, whether we're talking about humongous things like pre-pandemic to pandemic phase collectively, or we're talking about tiny, tiny things like you eat and then you have to go to the loo, right? In a few hours, digestion, cycles. So big, small, doesn't matter. The 8th house is also about cycles. And so moon here, you have an intuition and a high emotional intelligence about cycles, when they're about to begin, when they're about to end. And you could have a lot of emotional responsibility, like emotional maturity when it comes to dealing with these transformations, better than other people who don't have moon in the 8th house, perhaps. Alrighty, I hope everyone has some water. The moon is a very watery sort of power. Hydrate yourselves. Please get a drink. We're just at the 8th house, so we have 9, 10, 11, and 12 to go. So get comfy. This is Moon Through the Houses stream series. Get in your dressing gown, your pajamas, get something warm, get warm and cozy. And if you're just tuning in, remember today is the new moon in Libra. So in the UK, that's going to be around like 7:45, something like that PM. And that's the perfect hour, really, between 7 and 8 to set your intention for the coming month. And the full moon is going to be on the 31st of October, which is Halloween, right? Okay, 9th house. If you have your moon in the 9th house, the 9th house, in a nutshell, is about such things as your higher learning and your higher optimism, your higher belief in what I often on my channel call your right way. But this right way of yours is construed by broad interaction with everyone and everything in the world and the collective, because the 9th house is a public house, or it's one of the upper echelon houses in your chart. So it deals with we and us and collective sort of themes. And so with the 9th house, yes, it's optimism, but it's the optimism that is informed by all the lessons that you are learning from other people, other things, other places in this big wide world. Because the 9th house is about big lessons as well, big goals, big dreams. And the 9th house also deals with teachers. In traditional astrology, a lot of the time we see this interpretation. Teachers like uncles, guides, mentors, researchers and philosophers, and also religious types. So they could be like preachers and pastors, imams, whatever we want to call it. These types of people are also associated with the 9th house. And long distance travel is quite often associated with this house. But do keep in mind that that's not necessarily like physical long distance travel or foreign travel. It's much more in the metaphorical, figurative, questioning, curious sense. So you're sort of traveling abroad through studying lots of books about whatever country or culture or whatever religion, or you are researching something that is very venturing and very groundbreaking, because the 9th house does deal with luck that is found through breaking boundaries and asking questions. So if you have the moon in the ninth house, then you might draw in a lot of these big life lessons. And when I say life lessons, they're not always good. They could be good, bad, or ugly, right? So be careful about that because you're going to be drawing in a lot of these big life lessons. You might also, with the moon in the ninth house, be a deeply optimistic, faithful, and philosophical person. And deep down, you could be a great teacher or a great guide or, some sort of inspirer somehow. So, whatever your occupation, profession is, you could, regardless, still be deep down very inspirational. Um, and your mother, in some cases, with the moon in the ninth house, could be an actual teacher. Or even if the mother is not a teacher, the mother has this sort of teacher quality to them. Or the mother could be like a publisher of some sort, or a propagator, or proselytizer of some sort, or religious in some way, or very faithful, very optimistic in some way as well, if you have the moon in the ninth house. And you yourself may well, with this position, have a deep need to ask big questions. It's quite similar to having the sun in the ninth house. Sun in the ninth house, people want to really illuminate the big questions to get the answers. You might, with the moon in the ninth house, not be as like extroverted or pursuing literally of the answers, but you're definitely asking the questions. It might just be much more deep down or much more private, or you only do it maybe with people who are really close to you, people who you trust and feel comfortable with. That might be where you ask all these big sort of dreamy philosophical questions. And with the moon in the ninth house, there might be this need actually for these big dreams. So you need big dreams to feel fulfilled emotionally or to feel secure emotionally. And you might need big aspirations, so big goals, because the ninth house does deal with dreams and goals that we want to hit at. And the gift about the ninth house is that if you just do that, if you just tap in to, like an archer firing that arrow to the big goal, the big target, you'll find, surprisingly, 9 times out of 10 that you get it, that it's quite easy to actually hit. So it is the house of big dreams and goals, but sometimes we don't fulfill our ninth house if we stay in the dreamy state and don't like shoot. We don't actually make the jump. So keep that in mind as well if you're a moon in the ninth house person, because your emotions might get in the way as well of firing that arrow at your dreams and your goals. But yes, you might generally be a needy person when it comes to dreams and aspirations. Like if you're in some situation or place where there's no fulfillment, like you just feel so like stuck and everything is the same every day, that could be really not good for your moon. You're not fulfilling or drawing out your lunar powers. And deep down in private, you could just feel awful. And so moon in the ninth house people, make sure you stay in touch with and you reflect on inside what your goals and your dreams are. And yes, you might also, besides big goals, have big convictions with the moon in the ninth house. So this is probably someone who is very emotionally passionate about what they believe in, very emotionally passionate about their religion, very emotionally passionate about venturing out and being unafraid to ask questions and cross boundaries. That could be you. Okay, hi, if you're just joining the stream, do leave a comment. It's lovely to see your comments. Pluto in the 11th, oh gosh, okay. We'll get to that on another day, Kelly. Watch out, look out for my Pluto Through the Houses series. So, moon in the 10th house now. So the 10th house, again, in a nutshell, this house, well, it is about such things as what I call your castle, themes to do with your castle. So on my channel, I've often called the 10th house your castle house. And what I mean by that is If in the ninth house you've had all these big dreams and goals, the 10th house is like, okay, but how many arrows have you actually shot to get those big and sometimes easy to get goals? How many times have you actually put the effort in? What have you actually built from all of that aspiration and inspiration and preaching sometimes? What can you actually show as well for all that preaching and that belief and that faith and optimism? Because faith alone is not enough if you're unable to pass the test of faith. And the 10th house really is, in a way, or that ninth to 10th house transition really is the test of faith sort of boundary in our chart. So the 10th house is always asking us to show the proof in that pudding, right? In that ninth house pudding, show the proof. And therefore, the ninth house does start with our midheaven. So in the birth chart, if you use a website like astrotheme.com, like I do, which is free, by the way, you can go and use it to get your birth chart today. You will see MC, which is like, what does it stand for? Medium coli or something like that, but it's also called the midheaven or the midhaven. And this is what starts off your 10th house in the Placidus system, which is the system I use. Not every system, but the one I use, it starts off your 10th house. And the midheaven, therefore, is what formerly Alyssa Trehan, or Alyssa Sharp, now the Divine Venus, what she called in her early work here on YouTube, your kind of Instagram. So the midheaven is kind of your Instagram point of the 10th house, sort of how you would fancy yourself. That's how I like to see it. That's how you fancy yourself, how you want to be portrayed in the best light. That's the beginning of the 10th house. And then the rest of the 10th house really is about things that are kind of out of our control in terms of reputation, status, proof, right? And the castle, it's like, this is just what you've been able to create. This is just what you've been able to build. This is just what you've been able to show. And that is what it is. Okay. You can see why sometimes Capricorn is associated with the 10th house, because it is what it is type of house. It's just your career. It's just your LinkedIn spiritually. It's your spiritual LinkedIn, the 10th house. It is the proof, the CV, the resume spiritually of everything that you have achieved thus far, and that cannot be easily hidden or lied about. And if you do lie about things to do with your 10th house, you have big lessons later when planets transit your 10th house, especially if Saturn comes knocking on the 10th house door. Be careful of that. So don't lie on your resume, people. Okay, so that's in a nutshell the 10th house. But if you have your moon in this high house, because it's the highest house in your birth chart, it's the highest, most public, most open point. So a lot of your 10th house themes are going to be quite known to everyone, no matter if you know them or not. And therefore, you should be careful with what or who you attract having the moon in the 10th house, because anyone that you attract, and this includes things like concepts, ideas, anything you attract can easily be associated with your public persona or your reputation, or it can easily go on your record, because the 10th house can be your criminal record as well. The 10th house can be blacklists that you're on as well. Okay, it can be your reputation in the ugly, bad ways as well. So take care. And you are pulling people in naturally towards your reputation and your status. So be careful. Your mother, sometimes with the moon in the 10th house, could be a public figure somehow. So think about that. Is your mother like a public figure? And or the mother is someone who is always with you or was always with you in public, in the open. Maybe like on your Facebook, you have a lot of photos with your mother. That could be like a moon in the 10th house thing. Like most of your photos are you and your mother. And that's something that can come. And moon in the 10th house people are very sensitive as well. Very sensitive about how they are portrayed. So again, it's like kicked off by the midheaven, right? It's kicked off by that Instagram, how I fancy myself-ness. So you care a lot. You're very sensitive about Do I look nice? Am I portrayed nice? What are people thinking about me when they scroll through my spiritual feeds? What are people thinking about me? And what have people said about me? How many eyes can look at me or are looking at me? And how much control do I have over that? That's very 10th house sensitivity. Moon in the 10th house sensitivity. You might, with the moon in the 10th house, have a deep need for legacy as well. So you could be someone who gets very emotional about or sensitive about legacy. So what or who you're going to leave behind, or what you're going to leave behind for whom. And also you might have this deep need or emotional insecurity about reputation. You want to have a big reputation, maybe, or you deeply need to be reputed in some way. That could be moon in the 10th house. Let us have a drink because my throat chakras, it needs a bit of oiling. Okay, so say hello if you are just tuning in, and let me know your moon sign, first of all, and then which house your moon is in. So moon in the 11th house, that's where we're hopping to next. So the 11th house, very briefly again, is this house of collectives. It is the house of groups. It's any type of group. So any situation where there is more than two people and you are in that situation, that's an 11th house thing. So it does therefore include like your colleagues, you and your colleagues, you and your family, you and your friends, you and this group, this number of random people outside as well. This is like 11th house stuff. It also is in the virtual senses, of course, the digital senses. So any groups like WhatsApp chats, Facebook message chats that you're a member of, that's 11th house. 11th house is also Facebook pages and groups that you follow, or celebrities, politicians, or other figures who are quite famous that you follow on, let's say, social media. So Nicki Minaj, you and all the other millions of followers, that's an 11th house thing. And how you're interacting with Nicki Minaj and how you're commenting on her content and her work and all that sort of activity, that hive mind type thing, is very 11th house. The 11th house also deals with networks generally. So very socializing type things. And the 11th house deals with wishes, but not just like my wishes, but my wishes that can be attained if I align myself with other people. And then we progress together and the wish can be attained quicker, probably, but it can anyway be attained. And so the 11th house does contain friends and allies, strong allies. And sometimes the 11th house is how you are viewed as a friend by your friends. So that's interesting. Take a look at your 11th house and you can see how your friends might view you. So if you have like Virgo in the 11th house, your friends might view you as a kind of Virgoan friend. And this doesn't, you don't need to have any planets in Virgo. It's just your Virgo in 11th house energy coming through. So if you have the moon in the 11th house, be careful because you're going to be drawing in a lot of collective causes. So this could be like clubs, societies, initiatives, charities. You could be naturally drawing in with your lunar powers these things, these opportunities, and that's all very grand a lot of the time. But a lot of the other side of the time, it's not so grand because you need your own time as well. And you don't want to be that person, right, who says yes to every collective cause, but then finds it really hard to deliver on each of the causes they've committed to because they've just spread themselves incredibly thin. And so be careful if you're like an activist type person, because you might have that tendency with the moon in the 11th house to get very attached to all kinds of cause. But then there's this weird thing that happens where you can't really act or mobilize for many of these causes because you're just so swamped in it all. So take care and keep in mind this need for you, moon in the 11th house person, for you to discipline you time, okay, and your authentic self, because the 11th house deals with the collective, and that's opposite the 5th house, which deals with your personal creativity. So you can tell if you're spending too much time in your 11th house, if you start to feel inauthentic, or if you start to feel like everything you're doing is for the collective, and you're like a just a like a brainless sort of piece of a puzzle, or even worse, you're like a sheep or a follower for someone, some other person's vision. That's when you're having too much time in the 11th house. So start to channel your 5th house, okay, which is more about you and your authenticity and your creativity and just you having pleasure for yourself. We've got to have the balance. Okay, you might, with the moon in the 11th house, also have a deep need for your friends. So again, need and attachment when it comes to your friends, and also allies. You might be someone who's very fearful of having no allies, and so you want to draw them in, you want to be attached to them, you need them. Or just groups in general. You don't like to be away for too long from groups. You really feel comfortable, safe, emotionally satisfied in groups rather than on your own. Moon in the 11th house also makes someone who's very nurturing of your friends and of the group. So in a group, when you go out for a party or whatever, you could be like the mother of the group somehow, or the responsible one of the group, the driver maybe, or you're the wing person. Okay, you're the one who's taking a lot of responsibility, or you're very responsive, quickly responsive, reactive when it comes to like group invitations, or someone messages the group, you're in there very quickly to respond, however that might be. And also your mother with the moon in the 11th house may be a big part of your wishes coming true. And this is a really lovely potential for this placement. So your mother could play a huge part in your wishes. So any wish you have, see if this is relevant to you. See if allying with your mother helps you attain your wishes even faster or even more easily. Okay, so now we are about to swim into the very last house, the 12th house, and this is going to conclude our very last part of this moon through the houses stream series. So moon in the 12th house. Generally then, first of all, the 12th house deals with such themes as your deepest, most authentic, most unconscious spirit. It is what you are and who all the lives and everything that you've come out of. The first house is you as an individual and a body in this plane, in this mundane dimension, whereas the 12th house is all the subconscious and everything, or the unconscious even, everything that you've come out of. That one body has popped out of the 12th house and is here today, but is being kind of pushed unconsciously by the 12th house. And so the 12th house does deal with, of course, all the unconscious types of thing, but also hidden enemies. And when I say hidden enemies, that's not necessarily people, literally. It can be any other thing that kind of destroys you, or any other thing that trips you up, or any other thing that undoes you or puts you in prison. And prison can be literal, because the 12th house is associated with prisons and hospitals and incarcerations. But it can be very figurative as well, just as likely can be figurative. So you imprison yourself in your head. Mania is associated with the 12th house. Paranoia is associated with the 12th house. And delusion is associated with the 12th house sometimes. And so it could be that kind of imprisonment. So the 12th house has a lot of not very merry topics in it. It's quite similar to the 8th house in some ways. But the 12th house also includes your hidden treasure. So tapping into it, you can really tap into your spirit and you as a spirit and all of your spiritual power and heritage spiritually from all, if you believe in this, all of your past lives. The accumulation of all of that is in your 12th house. And the 12th house also is your dreamscapes. It is a sleep state. And pay attention if you have the moon in the 12th house, because you are going to receive so much in your dreams, in your dream state, or in meditation, because the 12th house deals with seclusion. It deals with isolation. It deals with meditation. And so even just meditating or being alone, often being alone, can help you receive so much. Moon in the 12th house person, you're going to receive so much because the moon is the most receptive, even more receptive than Mercury. That's what I believe. More receptive than Mercury. That's the moon. And quite likely these messages, these receptions are in your dreams. So, moon in the 12th house person. I want to say, first of all, I have my moon in the 12th house, just in case you didn't know. Mine's in Cancer. Yay. But be careful, because your emotions, your emotional state, your emotional reservoir can be the cause of your undoing. I'll say that again. Your emotional state can be the cause of your own undoing. So watch out for like your mood swings and your emotional reactions to people or situations, because unlike with other people who don't have their moon here, you might actually react in ways that really undoes you or your relationship, or really is dramatic. It's like a mother who's had enough of the kids and the husband. She's had enough, and she decides to like smash everything up and run away. Okay, that's like moon in the 12th house. So be very careful, because actions like that can be quite irreversible sometimes, or they can be really hard to recover from, or require a lot of like response to all of the collateral damage. So just be careful if this resonates with you, moon in the 12th house person. But also, moon in the 12th house people are deeply, 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 deeply intuitive. And they can sense enemies. You can sense these hidden enemies. Any planet in the 12th house, if you have a planet in the 12th house, you already have high intuitional, innate powers when it comes to hidden enemies. But the moon here is like you get this emotional intuition, this gut feeling about these enemies, and therefore they're no longer hidden to you. But with the moon here, you're often, or with really any planet in the 12th house, you're often late to respond, but especially with the moon, because you could get very emotional and fearful about these enemies that you're sensing. You're late to respond to that detection. And this is because the 12th house likes to be alone. And the 12th house powers, they are the strongest when you're alone, or when, again, you're in that meditation, or when you're asleep. So keep that in mind as well. So yeah, you can be late to respond, especially if you're someone who's spiritually unaware. If you don't know yourself very well or yet, then you can have big problems having the moon in the 12th house, because you sense all these enemies, deep down, but you have big problems with actually taking action against them and protecting yourself. So be very, very careful. Also, your mother, if you have the moon in the 12th house, could be away. That's the word I'm going to use. And away can be interpreted in so many ways. For some people, the mother passed away, literally. The mother is dead. For other people, the mother is just physically, literally away all of the time, at work, that could be. Or the mother could be put away, like the mother is in a prison or has been in prison a lot. Or the mother will be imprisoned, or the mother is incarcerated somehow, held against, having their freedom taken from them somehow, or restricted. The mother could have experienced, or be experiencing, or will experience something to do with incarceration, or being locked away, or even very generally, the mother, if you have moon in the 12th house, could just be someone who's very, very solitary, very secluded. The emotions are hidden. It's behind the first house, right? If you want to think about how to physically represent the 12th house, put your hand behind your head. Okay. The head, your face that you see, that I see on my camera here, right? This head, my face, is the first house. The hand behind my head is the 12th house. So any planet in the 12th house tells us what that person is not necessarily hiding from themselves, but what they appear to be hiding, or what is like unknown to other people, like completely unknown. It's a mystery. And so your mother's emotions could be a total mystery to you. Like it just baffles you where your mother is emotionally on certain issues or on their own life. And finally, Moon in the 12th house people might have this deep need for their alone time. And you need this alone time, Moon in the 12th house person, to reflect, to sit in your room and listen to the birds sing, or play the music, have the incense, whatever it is that you do. Okay, it could just be going for walks. And being alone and solitary doesn't mean that you aren't around other people, because a lot of the time you could be the person who likes to go to a cafe and people watch, or you like to walk through really busy, crowded cities and spaces. That could be you, but there's something else going on with the planet in the 12th house person, where they're still solitary in some sense. And it's helpful for them. It's meditative for them. It's very spiritual, spiritually cleansing, spiritually finding for them. And you need this time, Moon in the 12th house person. You need this space to reflect, and also to really intuit, to receive those messages of what needs to be done now, tomorrow, and what needs to be done about what has happened in the past and what you've detected, especially the Moon, what you've emotionally sensed, your gut instincts of the past. Your alone time gives you powerful and very necessary space and time to use your powers, your intuitional powers, to make a decision moving forward. So, Moon in the 12th house and Moon in all the other houses that we talked about today. I hope you enjoyed this last part of the Moon Through the Houses stream series. I want to know what sign, of course, you have the Moon in, but what house do you have your Moon in? And let me know in the comments how much of what I said resonates with you, and what can you add to the conversation? I want to hear your experience about your personal Moon placement. So do leave a comment below, and have a lovely, lovely Freaky Friday. And new Moon in Libra later today. Set an intention. October's a difficult month, so it doesn't have to be anything grandiose, but a sensible relationship intention, something moving forward for the coming month when the full moon occurs on the 31st. So just to close, I'm Hinny. Please do subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my work, if you like astrology. I am an astrologer, an experienced astrologer, and you can go to my website, hinnyhigh.com, to see my services and check out my testimonials as well from previous clients. And please get in touch at queerhinny@gmail.com if you would like to book a reading. I do general birth chart readings. I answer your specific nitty-gritty questions about your chart. I do transit readings. I do synastry readings. I do life path readings where I combine tarot with your birth chart. So get in touch if anything like that sounds up your street. And if you would like something else that I can't help you with, I do know a lot of people who have lots of other amazing magical abilities to help you, and I would be very happy to forward you to someone else if I can't help you myself. And finally, social medias. If you haven't already, please subscribe, click the notification bell, give it a thumbs up if you want, if you liked it, this video, this stream series, and leave a comment. And if you're on Instagram, follow me at Queer Hinny. If you're on Facebook, follow me on my new page, Queer Hinny. If you tweet, I'm not a big tweeter, but I'm getting into it. If you tweet, follow me at Hinnylicious, like delicious, Hinny plus licious. And also, I have a new Patreon account for my Hinstas. So you can go on over to Patreon, search for Queer Hinny, and you can donate per month £3, £12 or £13 or £30. But it doesn't matter what you give per month to support me in my work. You get the same exclusive content, whether you give £3 or £30. So the same exclusive content that you will not be able to find here on YouTube or anywhere else publicly. So if you're interested in that, please do check it out. It will be really helpful because I am trying to establish myself as a full-time astrologer. I'm not in the position to do that right now, but every little helps me. Whether you come to me for a reading or you support me on Patreon, everything really helps me in my journey to establish myself as a full-time astrologer. And I do have some exciting news later to reveal to you. I am going to be studying under a very famous astrologer. So I'm very excited for that, and I'll tell you more about that later. But I am investing and trying to invest as much as possible to the best of my abilities, and anything that you can do to support me as well would be fantastic. I hope you enjoyed this stream series, and have a lovely weekend. Take care. Mwah.